Hello, Anita. This is Connie, and I wanted to make this little video for you because there are a couple things with your lesson planning that I really want to make sure that you get clear. So I always like to start at the top. So your subject area is fine, and the goals that you write for your students are fine. They're clear. It lets me know exactly what you're wanting the students to do. You also have down here in your concepts, the concepts that the students are going to be working on, and that's fine. It's in this area where you need to begin to concentrate. There are two sets of standards that you find when you go into the lesson plan area. One of them is English language development, but the other is English language arts. Those are two separate sets um, of standards. So what happens is that when you go into English language development, you're talking about ELD. These are kids who have had their CELT test and have said where they are in whatever level of learning to speak English. And this is for your English language learners. What you want is ELA. You do want ELD. This is important, but this is not the content standard. This is saying how the student who's a second language learner is going to understand how you are going to make the content accessible and the behaviors in language that you're going to want to see from them as they apply it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch it over to the ELA standards so you can see where you're supposed to get these standards. So when you create a new lesson, and whatever the lesson has to be, and you go into the lesson plan that you've created, you get the box, but then you get here, you get the standards, right? So I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this, and here I'm going to add my standards. You already know how to do that. But what I want you to see are the standards that they're going to offer you and where you'll find the one that you need to choose. So this is the screen that you get offered. You've been coming here in order to find your English language arts standards. You actually have to go here, the California Academic Content Standards. That's a completely different set of issues. This is what the students will be tested on, and these are the standards that you are to have fulfilled by the end of the end of your school year. So we click on here. Then you get the various subject matters, history, math, physical education, and so on. You click here for your grade level. Grade level is 3. You click here, and are you going to do reading, writing, oral language, or listening and speaking? If you're going to be doing writing, you will click here. Then it'll tell you what kind of writing are you going to do, and depending on the lesson, you decide. So I'm just going to click here with writing strategies. Then it'll ask, oops, here we go, come on. Then it'll say, well, what kind of strategy? Are you doing organization? Are you doing penmanship, research, or evaluation and revision? Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to say organization and focus, because you did have the students organize their thoughts in this particular activity where they had to do the brainstorming and then decide about the events and then use their senses to determine the one that meant the most to them. So then you click on the one that they're going to do. So let's just say for this that they're going to develop a single paragraph. Okay, they're going to create this paragraph. I click here, I choose the standard, and then I can go back. I'm going to add the standard to my unit or my lesson. And so now that standard gets added here. So this is the standard that I just added. This is the content standard. The ELD portion of this is what I expect my English language learners to be able to demonstrate. So in writing, I'm going to say that for my, oops, not my K2s, let me go back. Well, I'll just use K2 because I don't feel like going back right now. I just want something to show up. Okay, I actually went back and I switched this back to grades 3 through 5. So here we have strategy and application for English language development. So what is it that they're supposed to be able to show me in strategy and application? And this asks me, where are they? The focus student or the students that I have, where are they? And for this purposes, because you really should include an ELD with every lesson plan, you just pick a level. And so let's just say I pick early intermediate. My focus student is an early intermediate. And since this is going to be on organization and focus, it's going to tell me this student should be able to do these things. This student should be able to write a short narrative that includes the elements of setting and character. Is that really what I'm asking the students to be able to do here? Am I asking them to write simple sentences and use drawings and pictures? Am I asking them to follow and follow a model given by the teacher independently and write a short paragraph of at least 4 sentences? I think for the lesson that you chose, they should be able to do this. All right, that's just the minimum that you're asking them to do. You don't want to ask them to write a thesis because they're at early intermediate and they can't do that yet. So this tells you what they should be able to do. So you choose that standard as well, and then you add it to your lesson. So now you have, for your lesson, you have the English Language Arts, English Language Development Standard, and you have the English Language Content Area Standard. So this is how I'm going to be teaching my lesson. I'm going to write an objective for this, that the students will be able to create a single paragraph and then whatever it's designed around. And then I'm going to choose this, that the student should be able to follow the model given by the teacher and write a short paragraph of at least 4 sentences. That's my accommodation. I've done this, and so now I add this into my standards area. And that's the part that you're missing from yours. So now we're back at your lesson. So these things are all right based on what you've written up here, but your content area standard has to have the language of the English Language Art standard in it. It can have other things added to it, but it must have what the student will be able to do based on the content standard for English Language Arts. Then your language objective is actually based on your ELD content standard. What is it that you expect your students to be able to do? And you write that here. Okay, so you always have the opportunity for reading, writing, listening, and speaking whenever you're doing a language objective. You've learned about the students, that's fine. The considerations that you want to have, that's fine. But here you need to talk about the adaptations you're making for the considerations. Now here, you also need to put English language development because you have an ELD student in your class. Whether you have one or not is really not important. What you have to do is always have a focus student that is ELD in the back of your head when planning. Sometimes you'll have a placement where there are none, but that does not absolve you from the fact of thinking about how would I plan for that student. You have to then write what you are going to do, what difficulties you anticipate. There's got to be something. If you have a gifted student, what difficulties do you anticipate this student having? If you have an emotionally developmental student in your class, what difficulties do you expect that student to have? So you need to write that down here. You need to fill that out. Then the adaptations, you're saying, okay, I'm going to make grouping adaptations. I'm going to make preferred seating adaptations. You have to explain why. This is where you explain, I'm making these adaptations because of this. So you want to make that nice and clear so that we understand that. And then finally down here you don't have to click all of these if all of these are not going to be evident in your lesson. If they are going to be evident in your lesson, I have to see them evident in the lesson. Then your assessment, you say there's a summative and a performance construction application or task assessment. Self-assessment, okay? I'm going to be looking for something that falls into here. Now, the description of this assessment. The assessment here is for this lesson, not for all the lessons that you're going to do in this series of lessons to reach the final goal, which is for them to create a portfolio. I'm looking for the assessment of this lesson that you're teaching today, right now, and how are you going to assess that the students got what you were giving today? That's the description that we need to have here. Then you have the model of instruction. You're going to do direct instruction and cooperative learning. Okay, I can live with that. And then that and this has to line up when you get down to the instructional strategies. Now, what you really have here are two lessons, lesson 1 and lesson 2. I don't have a problem with that, but your lessons that you have here, the assessment for these two lessons do not line up with what you wrote up here for the assessment for this lesson. The assessment down here, you said, excuse me, I'm sorry to rush this, but here we go. This says they will use the writing process to construct a well-organized personal narrative. What you actually had them do down here is to fill in a graphic organizer. You had them brainstorm. That's not the same thing as what you wrote up there. And the assessment for this is how well did they complete it. So you have to treat this whole part as though it has a beginning, a middle, and an end with a closure and an assessment. This tells me the kids are going to do this. I got no problems. And then you said you finally will ask the students to name five senses. I don't know how this is going to be. Are they just going to do it as they write? Are they going to do it as a whole group? You have to talk about this. You do almost get it. You say what you're going to tell the class and what they're going to do, and that you model it, and that then you ask the students to do this, and you give them a certain amount of time. What is not clear is, are the students just doing this on a piece of paper? Are the students doing this on a graphic organizer? How have you taught the students to think about their senses as it relates to this? This whole thing about the senses was added. You didn't have this up here at all. And now I'm supposed to have the students do something with their senses. I don't know how this got related, and I don't know how the students are going to be able to match these two things up unless I know that they've already done that, at which case you'll say they did that in prior knowledge. Then so this lesson up here could actually have been the intro, then what they are doing, and then the end is how you close it, which is to assess their graphic organizers for the level of mastery of completion of this pre-writing task. You could then, if you want to say that you did that here, which had then segued down to here, that's fine. However, that means that you actually have two lessons here. A lesson doesn't have to be a whole period. A lesson can be 10 minutes. It's just that what we want to see is how are you at the beginning, the middle, the end, closure, and assessment. So this needs to be reworked in order for it to work out properly. Again, I don't see how this had a closure. I don't see how you were assessing this, so that piece of the lesson planning process is also fallen short here. You had a close, which you said you check for understanding by calling on students to repeat the different steps. That's okay, but that's actually, and you said you didn't do it well enough. That's fine in your reflection, but that's actually something that you would put in here. That's really not the close. The close is how can you tell? What is it you're doing to wrap this around so that the students are really understanding, number one, that the lesson is closed, but number two, there's some kind of looking at what they've done so you're able to assess levels of mastery. Your reflection and analysis down here is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I do want you to, though, to go back, and I need you to rework this lesson. I've got to know that you can create a lesson plan that has these components that follow this paradigm, because if you're not able to do that, when you get further on in your lessons with us, in your terms, but in general in your teaching, you're going to find that you're moving around and teaching things that you had not intended. So I just wanted to make sure that you get this. Please look it over and please rewrite this lesson plan. And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be sending back this module to you. Additionally, you have an outstanding module that I'm just going to grade as is. I'd asked you to do something weeks ago and you hadn't done it, so just go. I need you to push submit. That's really important. Otherwise, I'm going to have to use it as not graded. So please make sure you do that. Go back, find that lesson, push submit, and I'll just do what's on there. It's not complete, but it's too late to complete it now. However, your work with Elrita, you will have to have that log. And I do expect to see the log and a plan that has come from you and Elrita about what it is you are looking at for areas of strength and areas of growth in your practice. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon.